Welcome again to this edition of Disaster Hack. I'm so glad you've joined me. I hope you're doing well. In this particular video, we're going to talk a little bit about decision making in disasters. Whether that's alone or with other individuals and groups, making decisions, determining what should be done and how you should do it can be very complex and complicated in a disaster situation. We have several learning objectives for our video today. I hope that this video will help you to recognize the challenge of making rational decisions in disasters. We'll also explore the typical problems and pitfalls of decision making and explore some solutions to those challenges. It's also important that we consider ethics when we make decisions. So to start off, let's begin with a key recognition. Making good decisions is very difficult in the best of circumstances. We have to weigh options, look at pros and cons, and select the best alternative. In a disaster, that's very difficult and perhaps even impossible. There's so much to do, with more being added to your plate every minute. It can be overwhelming, and certainly we don't have a lot of time to weigh all of the options. We have to act now, quickly and decisively. I really admire the work of Ezekiel Dror, who looks at decision-making in disaster situations. Let me share a few of his thoughts and observations with you. He mentions that we will certainly face adversity when making decisions in a disaster. There's a lot to do with serious consequences, no matter what choice we take. Also, there's image production, meaning we may have inaccurate perceptions of what has occurred, what the needs are, and what should be done. We also have to react quickly. We don't have a lot of time to make our decisions. Our decisions will face tragic choice, meaning there's drawbacks to nearly everything that we do. For instance, should we help businesses recover first or neighborhoods? Sometimes we can't do everything at once. Also, there's strain and stress that is posed to decision makers, and sometimes groups make inaccurate or incomplete or incorrect decisions based on the dynamics of organizations. There's another article I really like from Hammond, Keeney, and Rifa. These are three scholars from Harvard University. They look at decision traps, and although they're not writing the article specifically in relation to disasters, I think it can be applied nonetheless. They say that sometimes we anchor our decisions to prior information that we receive. We tend to believe what we hear first. They also say that we focus on the status quo. We try to avoid change. Sometimes we try to minimize sunk costs. We avoid spending extra money when that may be required. Sometimes we make decisions based on confirming evidence. We accept the data that supports our initial impression. Sometimes we frame our decisions. Unfortunately, we may have inaccurate assumptions or thoughts about what may be happening or what needs to be done. Sometimes we estimate and forecast in ways that are problematic. Sometimes we're overconfident. We believe we won't make mistakes. Sometimes we're too prudent. We're too cautious, in other words. And sometimes we base our decisions on recallability. We make our decisions based on prior events. We need to make sure that we avoid all of these different traps of decision making. In order to overcome these decision-making challenges in disaster situations, Dror says we have two options. First of all, we can design preferable models, meaning we can try to make rational decisions and really think them out and make the best decision we can. Or we can debug our decisions, try to minimize mistakes as we're making those decisions. Let's examine some more specific recommendations on how we can make better decisions in a disaster. First of all, we can increase our situational awareness, understanding what has occurred, what needs to be done, and who should do it. We can listen carefully to others. We can determine if our perception is accurate, see things from different points of view. We must take care of our physical needs. We need rest. We need to sleep. We need to eat proper foods and be hydrated. It's also important that we avoid decision inertia. Sometimes we're so worried about what we should do that we don't make any decision at all. That can also be problematic. We can adapt and adjust as needed. In other words, it's okay to depart from SOPs and emergency operations plans when that is required. As we make decisions, it's imperative that we keep ethics in mind. Let me just give you some practical examples. For instance, when we issue a warning, it's important to do it in more than just the English language. We need to make sure that we don't assume people will be able to evacuate. What if they have no car? Sometimes we're not concerned about sheltering illegal or undocumented aliens, but it's important to recognize that we need to treat people humanely. Triage provides ethical dilemmas, but it really is there to help us care for the most people possible. And then, of course, we have to determine our recovery priorities. We need to recognize the consequences of our decisions, both good or bad. In order to make ethical decisions, we can follow the advice provided by Velasquez and this author's colleagues. There are important considerations to keep in mind. For example, the utilitarian approach. What will happen based on your right or wrong choices, and have you conducted a cost-benefit analysis? We can look at it from a rights approach. Does the decision recognize the rights of those who will be impacted by our choice or action? We can examine it from a justice approach. Does the choice discriminate, illustrate favoritism, or illustrate an unfair bias? We can explore our decisions through a common good approach. Will our decision benefit the whole community and not just certain individuals? Or we can look at things from a virtue approach. Do our actions reflect moral virtues? To conclude, let me reiterate that it's almost impossible to make rational decisions in disasters. Disasters are very complex and complicated, and we'll have to operate by bounded rationality, doing the best we can. There are many errors that we can avoid, however, but we must keep ethics in mind as we make our choices. If you would like further information about ethics, I would point you to the I'm Code of Ethics at the website listed here. Also, you may want to Google the FEMA Higher Education Program. Shirley Jensen and her colleagues have provided some great information about ethics in disasters and decision making. Thanks so much and have a great day.